Hello, good day, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining me from today. My name is Oyima Emmanuel. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, and today I want to walk us through how to create a storage account and what features comes with a storage account. On the screen here, I have four features that comes with a storage account. First is Azure Blob, Azure Files, Storage Queue, and Table Storage. For Azure Blob, let's look at it in this scenario whereby you want to be storing unstructured data. When we say unstructured data, it could be images, documents, videos, or even backup data. Because I've seen a scenario where you could use Azure Blob Storage as a backup repository for backup solutions like Vim Backup and even Veritas Backup. And also, it also comes with another flavor called Azure Files. For Azure Files, let's look at it in this scenario whereby you have a file server where you assign permission to users with a security group, so they have permissions to any of the folders in that particular share. So in this case, you could also do the same thing with Azure File Share because it works with SMB protocol and also network file system protocol. So you could mount or attach the Azure File Share to multiple virtual machines in your environment so that users that needs permission to access that files can easily access it. And on the other hand, we also have queue storage. So for queue storage now, it's used to store and retrieve messages. So if you want to store and retrieve messages, queue storage is the best option for you. While for table storage is a service that stores non-relational structured data and also structured data. So you could use all these features if you provision a storage account. So in this case, I'm going to just go to my Azure portal. So I'm going to create a storage account straight away. Let me just share the screen to my Azure environment. Okay, here we go. I'm already signed into the Azure portal, but for those that are just joining us today, or maybe new to Microsoft Azure, I'll just show us how to access the Azure portal. It's just for us to go to portal.azure.com and hit enter. Once you go to portal.azure.com, Microsoft Azure page is open. It asks me to sign in, so I could either pick any of the accounts that have a subscription. For now, I'm using my first account here that is connected to the Windows that has the subscription I want to use to provision the storage account. So let's just wait for it to load. It's asking me for authentication, which I have to prove that I'm the owner or the person that has the account. So once it comes, I'll just put in the code. So let me just type it 6799994. So I'll just click on verify. Okay, it helps me into the Azure portal. Here under Azure services, I have storage accounts, virtual machines, front door, subscriptions, and app service. In your own case, if it's the first time that you're just launching the Azure portal, you may not see some of all these services here. So what you just do to avoid confusion is you just come to search resources, services, and docs. So we just come here, type storage account. So storage account appears, you just click on storage account. Boop, 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 boop. Now our storage account has loaded. All we just need to do here, I have other storage account that I've created with storage version 2. So I'm going to be creating a new storage account for the demonstration of creating a storage account. So I'll just click on create. Just wait for the create page to show. Yeah, I'm here. So it's already here. So firstly, for you to create any resource on Microsoft Azure, you need a subscription. And also you need a resource group because a resource group is like a container where you group all the resources you are creating in your environment. So for this case, to avoid confusion, I'll just create a new resource group and give it training on storage account ROG. So I'm giving it this name so that anytime I see this resource group, I will know that the resource group is for training on Azure. I will now give my storage account a name. Let's note that storage account name has to be unique. So I'll just say Oyimafu. I'll use the time 4:06. Then I will now add date to it. Like, 3 today is 31st of March 2025. So let's see if it's going to accept this name. So it has to be unique. So if I use a name that someone has used before, it will reject it. But because this name nobody have used it, that's why it accepted it. For the region now, most times Microsoft has a lot of region, but it's best you select a region that is closer to you, because if you select a long distance region, it also impacts costs and you get latency issue. So I'll just go for South Africa North. Just leave it as my default region. Then I'll now wait for it to load. So for primary service here, we have different services that you could use. If you want to use Azure Blob Storage or Azure Data Lake Storage, you could select it. If you want to use Azure Files, you could select Azure Files. And if you want to create tables or queue. So basically, I'm going to be selecting Azure Blob Storage or Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Yeah. So under the performance, I have the option to select a standard performance or a premium performance, but I'll just rather we go for a standard performance for this lab. In terms of standard performance, you could also create blob storage, you could create file share, you could create queue in your storage account. And also, if you go for premium, you could also do the same thing. But for premium, it's recommended for scenarios that requires low latency. So depending on the scenario that you need to create the storage account, if it's an enterprise company that you're creating the storage account for, you should go for premium because you know they require low latency. The next thing is redundancy. So for redundancy now, it's more or less like you want copies of your data to be stored either on a single region or on multiple regions. So for this case, if you select local redundant storage, what it means is that your data will be stored on just one region and it is the lowest cost. But if you use geo redundant storage, it means that your storage will be stored in a secondary region. In times of, let's say, region outage, at least you know that you still have access to your files. But in this case, we could just select local redundant storage. So we'll just go for local redundant storage. And also there are other redundant methods such as zone redundant storage. So for zone redundant storage, it comes with protection against data center level failures. So it's recommended for high availability scenarios. So me, most times I go for geo redundant storage in terms of my own advice to clients. I advise them to go for geo redundant storage. But depending on the case, as the case may be, because all these things depends on what the customer wants or what you want as the person creating a storage account. So I'll just go for local redundant storage. Then I'll just click on review and create. We'll just wait for some time for our storage account to create. Just observe it. Let's just watch it together. Depending on your network, sometimes it might take less than 5 minutes, sometimes it might be more. So let's just watch it create. So now it's telling I need to click on create. So basically now these are the settings I specified. So I specified my subscription which is needed to create any resource in Microsoft Azure, and I also specified the resource group to group my resource. So anytime I see training on storage account RG, I will know this resource group is for the storage account I'm creating for the demonstration of this lab. And the replication, I selected local redundant storage because local redundant storage is the cheapest and I actually don't want to spend much of my credit on this demonstration. So I'll just click on create. So we'll just wait for it to create. Just hoop, 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 hoop. Hoop, 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 hoop. Let me just bring back to our notice why this is creating. Let's not forget that blob storage is used for storing unstructured data such as images, documents, and pictures. While we have Azure Files, which is more or less like is just a cloud version of your on-premise file share that works with SMB protocol and also network file system. And queue storage is used to store and retrieve messages. For Azure Table, just like you have your database, whether secure or no secure, so you could use it to store both structured data and semi-structured data. So we'll just observe our deployment and wait for it to complete. Just wait for it to complete. Our deployment is in progress. Let's just monitor. Whoop, our deployment has complete. We'll just go to resources. So we see the resource we just created. Yeah. On the overview page here, you have the options to see what you have created. The replication we picked was local redundant storage. If we pick geo redundant storage, it's going to be here. The account kind we selected was storage version 2, and the other settings here are like, let's say for blob services, under the properties we will see the properties of our blob service. For the default tier, we picked hot. So for hot now, it's used for when you want to be accessing a document or files frequently. So it's used for frequently access files. That's when you use hot storage. So most times on website that people visit and they usually need to retrieve pictures and image faster, so hot is the best. But if maybe for instance they don't need to retrieve those image faster, you could just use cool. So depending on the scenario, so if for instance maybe those datas are datas that you don't really use all the time, like you just use them once in a while, you could just go for the archive tier rather. So for blob anonymous access, it is disabled. For soft delete, blob soft delete, it is disabled. So see what this all these settings are the services and the features of the blob service and other security measures also. In this case, I'll just go to the storage data storage. So we could just explore how to create containers and how to upload files, and we'll see how all this works. So let me click on containers. So we'll just go ahead and create a new container. So the default container we have here is logs. So I'll just click on create. So I'll call this container, let's call it files, let's say file dump. So it's complaining of the upper cases, so I'll just change them to lowercase. Okay, there we go. Let's see, this name may only contain lower cases. Okay, let me clear and type again. Let me see file dump. Okay, so for anonymous access, because by default on our blob services anonymous access is not enabled. So because anonymous access is not enabled, I can't allow anonymous access here. So if I click on advanced, I'll see other settings like encryption scope. If I want to apply encryption scope, if I have any scope existing, I could just use it. And if I want to enable version level immutable support, I could also do that. So I'll just go for create. So once I create it, we'll just wait for the container to create. So this container now is where I can store my pictures, videos, text files, and more. So it's more or less like, as I was explaining, I was like, a blob storage is used to store unstructured data. So let me just upload a picture to the container. I'll just click on browse. So once I browse, it opens my local system. Then I could just select any picture that I want to select. So let me just use Hashem picture. Let me just specify it. Then let me click on upload. So now I've uploaded this